Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Nadarga Velazi, and coming up in today's newscast. Another terror attack over the weekend, this time in the heart of Tel Aviv. Israel reportedly carried out a rare daytime strike against targets in northwestern Syria. ILTV with all the details. And Israel's entry to the Eurovision Song Contest released to rave reviews. The 3 men wounded in Thursday's terrorist shooting in Tel Aviv remain hospitalized. One remains in critical condition. Meanwhile, 2 other terror attacks were thwarted by Israeli security forces over the weekend. We get more in this report from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
On Thursday night, the nation's attention suddenly shifted from a day of anti-government protests to a terror attack in the heart of Tel Aviv. 3 Israeli men were wounded when a terrorist came up from behind and opened fire. The 3 victims were on their way to a wedding of a friend nearby. After the Palestinian gunman fired at them, he tried to flee the scene, but was quickly chased down and neutralized by police officers and an armed civilian who was at the scene. David Furman was on his way to visit his daughter, who lives nearby, when he heard the shots. He ran to intercept the terrorist and was joined by 2 other police officers who arrived on the scene. Furman said that after the terrorist attempted to fire on them, they were able to neutralize him.
תראה, זה לא קל לקחת חיי בן אדם, אבל כשמחבל מתועב כזה בא לרצוח את היהודים, אז צריך לקחת לו את החיים, זה הכל.
Hundreds of Israelis gathered at the scene of the attack to stand vigil and pray for the recovery of the victims. 32-year-old Or Asher remains in critical and life-threatening condition. 34-year-old Rotem Mensano is in serious condition. 36-year-old Michael Osden suffered moderate wounds and was well enough to speak to the media. All 3 wounded men are being treated in Ichilov Hospital. The attacker was identified as Mutaz Salah al-Kawaja, a 23-year-old resident of the West Bank village of Nilin, with affiliations to the Hamas terrorist group. A day after the attack, 2 Arab Israelis turned themselves into police for driving the attacker to the scene. This was not the only terror attack that occurred over the weekend. A short time after the Tel Aviv attack, an improvised explosive device was found on a bus in the Jewish community of Beitar Eilit in Judea. A surveillance camera showed a terrorist leaving the vehicle before smoke was seen rising from one of the seats when the device apparently malfunctioned. Police sappers arrived on the scene and neutralized the device. There were no injuries. Residents were ordered to remain at home until the terrorist was captured a day later. And early this morning, Israeli forces killed 3 Palestinian gunmen who attempted to open fire against Israeli soldiers at a military outpost in Samaria. The IDF said in a statement that armed men fired at the force near the Jit Junction in the Shomron. A Golani patrol force, which carried out the counterattack activities in the area, responded and neutralized 3 of the gunmen, while 1 gunman turned himself in. The Army said it confiscated 3 M16 rifles, a handgun, and cartridges that were in possession of the terrorists. The arrested suspect was handed over for further interrogation to security forces. There were no casualties or injuries to the Israeli forces.
And Israelis went back to routine Sunday morning following the weekend of terror, as only they know how. ILTV's Ariela Lachiani went to the site of Thursday's terror attack to hear from the people on the street. Let's take a look.
Tel Aviv's Dizengoff Street, one of the busiest central streets in Tel Aviv and the site of Thursday's terror attack, was once again bustling with activity.
So I'm from Belgium, I live in Brussels, but I'm here to visit and I come a lot to Israel. And honestly, when I heard what was happening, I was cooking in the kitchen and my boyfriend just told me yeah, there was an attack right now. And no, I couldn't come from a place where this stuff happened on a monthly basis like it does here, and it really shocked me a lot. And I had a lot of time to process, it took me a lot of time to process it because we lived just next to where it was. And it was just really, it's just, I don't know, it's not that I don't feel safe anymore because I still feel like there is I don't know, I feel like everyone has this kind of bubble that it feels like it's not going to happen to you, especially. So I don't feel unsafe, but it really shook me up. And it's just making you a little reminder of how life is short and unpredictable. That's it.
Dizengoff Street also draws a lot of tourists. A couple from the UK was eating at the restaurant right at the site of the attack when they heard the shots.
We'd arranged to meet some relatives for a meal here, and we met outside, we got a table inside, and then literally 10 minutes we just ordered drinks. We heard 3 shots. At first we thought, is this just a Purim firework? But then the outside people had seen what had happened, so we went under the tables or we ran in the toilets, and we weren't sure what was going to happen next. The restaurant staff were fantastic. They helped the people that had been injured, and they were very good with the clients. They brought us water, they made sure we were okay, they kept everybody calm. In fact, my husband's just been in to thank them, because from the UK, obviously, it was a shock. But since then, we've sort of thought, you know what, people are dealing with every day, especially in Ukraine. So for us, we're lucky. The other people living in here or in Ukraine aren't lucky. They're dealing with that every day.
One thing I want to message, and we've messaged this to our family, is it's not going to stop us coming to Israel.
And as the 3 victims of Thursday's attack remain hospitalised, Israelis have no choice but to once again prove their resiliency in the face of terror.
And in other news, on Sunday, Syria accused Israel of carrying out an airstrike against targets in the northwest of the country. The strike was carried out in the daytime, a very unusual and rare occurrence. All the details in the following report. The Syrian state-run media agency Sana accused Israel on Sunday morning of carrying out a rare daytime strike against targets in northwestern Syria that injured 3 soldiers. The news agency called the strike an Israeli act of aggression and cited an unnamed military source that said that at about 7:15 a.m. on Sunday, Israel carried out an aerial attack with bursts of missiles from the direction of northern Lebanon, targeting some sites in the countryside of Tartus and Hama provinces. He added that Syrian air defenses were able to intercept and shoot down some of the missiles. The source added that 3 army personnel were injured in the attack, which also caused material damages. Videos circulating on social media showed a plume of smoke at the site of the attack. Hebrew media site N12 reported that the target included a missile development center where rocket engines are developed and assembled. The report said that the attack was carried out after 2 conditions were met. Intel regarding the assembly of equipment delivered from Iran was ascertained, and there were as few people as possible at the location. The Israel Defense Forces did not respond to the allegations, in line with its policy of not commenting on such attacks. This is the 2nd airstrike that Syria has attributed to Israel this month. Last week, Syria said Israel carried out an airstrike on the Aleppo International Airport, shutting it down for several days. And we want to let you know that ILTV's new app is now available. So if you want to stay connected to the latest news from Israel, the Middle East, and the Jewish world, download our app now on all your devices. It's available in the App Store for both Android and iPhone. And moving on, in a blow to Israel and the United States, Iran and Saudi Arabia announced a reestablishment of ties on Friday. The details in the following report. Iran and Saudi Arabia agreed on Friday to reestablish relations after years of discord between the 2 countries. The deal was announced after 4 days of behind-the-scenes talks brokered by China between top security officials from Iran and Saudi Arabia.
مذاکره ما بین 2 کشوری که حدود 7 سال روابطشون قطع بود، یک گشایشی توی روابط ایجاد بشه. آقای رئیسی هم موافقت کردن مبتنی بر اون توافق من 6 روزی هست در بکنم و مذاکراتی در این رابطه رو با همتای خودم از عربستان سعودی داشتم.
As part of the agreement, Tehran and Riyadh will resume diplomatic relations and reopen their embassies within 2 months' time. Additionally, the 2 countries are set to reactivate past security collaborations as well as trade and economic agreements. Saudi Arabia broke off diplomatic ties with Iran in 2016 after its embassy in Tehran was stormed over the Saudi execution of a prominent Shiite Muslim cleric. Since then, tensions only rose, with Saudi Arabia blaming Iran for attacks against the kingdom's oil facilities in 2019, and with both countries deeply entrenched in a war in Yemen. The reestablishment of ties brokered by Beijing represents a blow to the United States and Israel, who have been working to promote the Abraham Accords and to build a wall of defense against Iran's nuclear ambitions. As such, Iranian proxy terror group Hezbollah praised the agreement, as did Palestinian terrorist groups Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Meanwhile, an exclusive report by the Wall Street Journal last week claimed that peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel is contingent on assistance from the U.S. in developing a Saudi civilian nuclear program. Israel had hoped that Saudi Arabia would be the next country to join the Abraham Accords, though these latest developments now bring this possibility into question.